Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of Human Medicine, HUMED. I'm host Dr. David Spiro, and I'm with my awesome, dawsome podcast editor, Ty King.
I appreciate it. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks. I always like these interviews because I think you're a great interviewer, and I get to tell my own stories.
Yeah, and I know you probably have a ton.
I have a ton of stories, although I really deeply thought about two things to talk about when I obviously have one, but I have a second story as well that I don't feel like I'm emotionally ready to share with the audience yet, and it's extremely vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I am gonna get vulnerable with this story, and this story is about uh, back again when I was a small town doctor in Newport. So, for the audience to um, know, if you're an early learner or you're not in medicine, you go to medical school, then you spend 3 years training in a craft, at minimum of 3 years usually. And I trained in pediatrics, and then after those 3 years, then you can specialize, and I did. I actually took a break between my 3 years of residency and my specialty in emergency medicine, and I worked in a small town in Newport, Oregon, where I paid off all my college and medical school debt, and um, I learned almost every single skill that one could learn to become uh, a, a pretty solid clinician.
Yeah, I would imagine because you're working in a smaller town, you probably fulfill a lot more roles than you normally would working in a larger hospital.
Yeah, it's exactly
Yeah.
right. So the town that we worked in was Newport, Oregon, which was in Lincoln County, 3 to 4 hours away from any children's hospital. So I was the pediatrician for a few thousand children, and I worked on a Native American reservation as well called the Celeste Tribe. But what was really interesting is I was also the child psychiatrist. I was also the pediatric gastroenterologist. I was the pediatric neurologist, because it took a lot of energy and effort to send a child 3 to 3.5 hours for a specialty appointment.
Wow. Yeah.
And you don't want to kind of fuck that up. Excuse my
Right.
language, but you don't want to send someone up to the medical school and it be unnecessary.
Yeah.
So you want to try to do as much as you can so people don't have to travel. And it was definitely a crazy ride. But everything in medicine is around, in my opinion, is around mentorship.
Yeah.
And to grow and to continue learning. I still have mentors, life mentors. I have mentors who are in medicine, both here and around the country. And when I was in Newport, Oregon, I was very, very fortunate to show up with a gentleman who had been there already for 20 years and had figured out how to really master practicing rural pediatrics. And he taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And his name is, he's still alive. His name is Dr. Stephen Burns. And I'll just tell the audience a really quick, funny story about that. Stephen had a child named Carson, and Carson, I mentored as he graduated from a great school in the northwest part of the United States called Whitman College. It's a small private university college. It's not a university; it's a college. And he ended up going to Stanford for medical school and did pediatrics and pediatric emergency medicine at Seattle Children's, and I got a chance to work with him and support his journey, and so I was mentored by his father, and then I had an opportunity to mentor Carson a little bit, and he spent some time with me in the pediatric ER in Oregon, and now he's a peds EM physician in Portland, Oregon. So
Wow, that's
it's an
incredible.
incredible story, right?
Yeah.
And I don't often think about it or talk about these things, but one of the most powerful things is to be a mentor and be a meaningful person in someone's life, and also to be mentored
Mm.
and continue to learn and grow.
Right. I think it's a lifelong thing, right? Where you continuously
It's a total life.
seek more education, try to
Yeah,
learn as much as you possibly can,
yeah,
about as many things you can. Yeah.
yeah. So the story I wanted to tell today is about when I was in uh, Newport, and uh, I had been established for a couple of years, and I had met a number of families, and I really started to become ingrained in the community, which was great. We helped start a child advocacy center, which is a center for child abuse in the county with the DA's office. I had was on the board of the Oceana, Hey Oceana, organic food co-op. So I was and I was a proud member of the YMCA there.
Hmm.
That's a young men's Christian association, even though I'm a nice Jewish boy.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Crossing lines, but
they
yeah.
like
Yeah.
Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, no,
Yeah.
they like Jews. I just pay the membership and everyone's
Yeah.
happy. So, but there was a racquetball community, squash back then, and which became my sport, and hung out with a group of guys and got to know them, and one of them has become a very close mentor and friend, Dennis Moore, who invested in some of the companies I started 10 or 15 years ago, and so I really became ingrained in the community, and so much so that I'd go to Fred Meyer's, which is the grocery store there,
Mm.
or um, walk down the street in the center of Newport, and I would always see someone I knew, a patient, family member of a patient,
Yeah.
um, and so there was a part of it coming from New York and living in cities like San Francisco for med school that early on the anonymity that you have in life,
Hmm.
because I could walk down Little Rock and go to Samantha's or one of the
Sure.
restaurants down there and not see a soul that I know.
Yeah.
But and Little Rock's small. Uh, when you're living in San Francisco, you can have almost complete anonymity,
Yeah.
but not so much when you're a small town doctor
Yeah.
in a town of 3,000 people. Yeah, it's just totally different.
Yeah.
So at first, it became uh, I I I I I was worried about it, like I'd never have privacy,
Yeah.
and then once I accepted it, it actually became a beautiful thing because you feel safe, you feel connected. I've never felt more a part of a community than towards the end of my 5 years, in the small town, and it was 5 years because the hospital, and I had an agreement, the hospital system, that they would, help support me in practice, and ultimately, all my loans would be paid off after 5 years, so it was a 5-year commitment, and I worked on the Siletz Tribe Native American reservation, so it was quite an incredible experience, and then you're right on the ocean. Like, the house that I ended up buying was right across from, at the ocean, and not a direct view, 'cause I couldn't afford it, but you can actually hear the ocean and walk down and be on unobstructed beach. I lived in a small little town called South Beach, south
Mm.
of Newport, uh, and, there's not much going on in the town.
Yeah.
There's, like, not much going on. I mean,
Sure.
there's a little stuff going on,
Yeah.
but you're really isolated, and, if you wanna raise children, you have to sort of figure out that that's kind of it's a sacrifice,
Right.
and it's one of the reasons why it's really hard to recruit, um, physicians to rural areas.
Sure.
It's just challenging.
Yeah.
There are parts of life that are challenging. So the story is about, uh it starts off with a birth. So as a pediatrician, people would come to my office, which, by the way, was in a trailer,
Okay.
double wide trailer,
Yeah, sure.
thin walls,
Uh-huh.
interesting kind of setup right next to the hospital. So it was essentially they built it in the parking lot and right where the helipad was. So when the helicopter would come, we'd have to just kind of stop
Yeah.
doing what we were doing because it was so loud.
So the
Um,
hospital would direct patients over to Dr. Spiro's office, which was a trailer in the parking lot.
yeah, Dr. Spiro and Dr. Burns.
And Dr. Burns was there.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got you.
And then the guy that took over for me is Dr. Rash.
Uh,
So Rash and Burns.
okay.
That is,
Great combination.
you
Yeah,
just can't make any of this stuff up.
right.
But one of the things that I would do is obviously Monday through Friday, office hours. And then when I was on call on the weekends, I would open up the office and see patients myself.
Mhm.
Just sit in the office, take their vital signs, interview them, examine them, do what I need to do, call their meds in to wherever I need to call in. Um, and I was on call every other night for 5 years, which is
Mhm.
a lot of call. So one of the other things that I would do is go to do newborn exams. And that would occur in one of two ways. One is the newborn is born, there were no issues, and I just go to the nursery in the morning to round and do um, a newborn admission exam and then a newborn discharge exam. Because children back then, especially with ultrasound being a little bit more crude than it is now, certain defects are not always identified until you're born, like
Mhm.
heart defect or other things. So I would also go to deliveries. Now, the delivery when women were delivering babies, when it was a high risk situation, sometimes babies poop into the amniotic fluid. It's called meconium. And when the amniotic fluid, which bathes the child, gets into their lungs, can cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
So I would have to be called to those deliveries very frequently back then. We now know that most meconium births, you don't need to have someone right there all the time. But I was called at 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and could lead to a bummer of a next day when you really don't get a chance to sleep.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you show up at a delivery at 3 in the morning, it's jarring because usually there's someone screaming. It's bright
Yeah.
lights, and it's just like a
You're going
complete
right into it.
you
Yeah.
go right into it, and you're in it's like overwhelming, uh, uh, explosion of sort of nervous energy
Mhm.
right at you. So, in this particular case, I didn't it wasn't an emergent delivery. It was on a weekend, and I went to the hospital. And I'm given the name and the OB GYN floor, the obstetrics floor was 4 rooms.
Yeah.
The emergency department at the hospital was 4 rooms. And this is a very, very small community hospital. At the time, it was called Pacific Communities Hospital. And so I show up, and it turns out that it is the mom of one of my other patients.
Oh, wow.
So I was taking care of her daughter, and she, um, she said, "Hi, Dr. Spiro." I said, "Hi, Donna." And we
I guess the screaming hadn't started yet.
the scream. No, well, right. The baby was born. Baby was
Okay,
born.
this is post. Okay.
This is post is a normal newborn
Yeah.
exam, just showing up. And it was so interesting. So did the exam, everything was going just normal. Tons of family in the room. And she said to me, um, "I have something special to tell you."
Hmm.
And I said, "I would love to hear." And she said, "We're naming the baby after you."
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And, it's interesting. Like I was uncomfortable,
Yeah.
like immediately uncomfortable when she said that, right?
Mm.
And I said, "Well, Donna, that's absolutely an honor." but please don't feel obligated. She's like, no, 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 no. We want to do this because it's a baby boy and we would love for him to blah, blah, blah. And um, I was like, wow, that's incredible. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, kid you not, in the moment, this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
There's something that didn't feel good about it, like
Mm,
in the deep recesses of my soul.
sure.
Um, Normal baby, happy baby. Saw him at his 2, 4, and 6 month exam, and everything was going well, growing. We call thriving in the world of general pediatrics. And I was at a barbecue, at a friend's of mine barbecue on a Saturday, a random Saturday, and in Newport, Oregon, most of the time it rained 300 days a year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of gray, and but there are 60 days a year where there's sunshine,
Hmm.
and when there's sunshine on the coast of Oregon, it's absolutely beautiful. And because you not only have the coast, but you also have a little mountain range behind the coast, and I
Mhm.
mean it's just physically beautiful to be there. And it happened to be at my friend Bruce Watanabe's house. He was an orthopedic surgeon, about my age, smaller guy, and just a lovely human being and a very, very good orthopedic surgeon. And he had just gotten married, and Bruce was into barbecue. And whatever Bruce did, he did it big. So he had this house that was up on a hill. It overlooked the ocean. It was absolutely a stunning place. And you know, we're we're all a little bit weird, those of us that go into medicine.
Yeah.
I actually think that we're all on the spectrum, like we're
Okay.
all neurodiverse. Um, I certainly am, and I think it is especially true of those of us that go into emergency medicine.
Yeah.
But anyway, Bruce was quirky in some ways, and his passion, what were was just to have the best barbecue set up and food that he could get at the time. So we showed up at his house, and there were like 5 barbecues going, and double barbecues, and smokers, and all sorts of things, and about 30, 40 people there, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and I was just, like, so happy because, you probably get a little bit of seasonal affective disorder when you're on the coast, um, just because it rains so much and you don't see the sunshine. So happy day, and I'm on call, and back then, it was a pager, and, um I checked my pager, and it was going off, and, it was the hospital, saying that there was a motor vehicle accident and there may be a child. I said, "Okay, that's interesting." Earlier that day, I had seen about 10 kids in the office, and one of them was David, who was sick. He had a cold.
Mhm.
He came in, he had a runny nose and a cough, and, uh
And he was still a few months old at this point?
he was 9 months old,
9 months.
and so I'd seen him earlier that day in the office, and, he was well appearing,
Right.
and, at that time, I thought he may have had, a very early version of, chickenpox, varicella, which we now have a vaccine for, but back then there were no vaccines for varicella. So, it was quick. I just completely forgotten about it. Then I get a page from uh, his mom saying that, and she lived 40 minutes south of Newport. She lived in a small town called Yachats, spelled Yachats. And she said, he's not been doing well since we left the office. I said, what's going on? And she said parts of his body are turning purple. And on the coast of Oregon and in the Pacific Northwest at that time, there's a disease called meningococcemia, which is a kind of bacteria that can invade the body very quickly and without treatment can cause death within 24 hours. It's um, freaking scary. And uh, thankfully, we have a vaccine that covers much of it, but not still all of it. We can still see it, but still much more rare now than it used to be.
Hmm.
So I knew exactly what the problem was almost from her description. And uh, I, I said, come on, come into the hospital, not to my office, but to the ER. And apparently she got into the car with some family and got into a car accident on the way to the hospital with the baby who's sick. Uh, because if we had called if an ambulance were called, it would have taken an extremely long period of time to get the baby up, and it would have been much quicker for her to just drive to the hospital, even though the baby was quite ill. So, and again, this is about 6 or 8 hours after I had seen him, and I'm hanging out at Bruce's house and having one of the best days of the year. I was in my fourth or fifth year of practice at the time, and I got to the hospital, and David was barely alive. He was in what's called shock, so his blood pressure was low, his heart rate was high, half of his body was purple, and then that purple turns into necrosis, and your body starts to die off, and pieces of limbs and fingers, etc. And so we had to put a tube in his throat, which is called intubation, and then give him antibiotics. And sometimes that makes them worse initially, and fluids, and immediately called the ICU at one of the hospitals in Children's Hospitals in Portland, and transported him up to Portland via helicopter. Uh, Hugged Donna, had to give her, the bad news, of course, that he may not live, and very, very difficult. And, I sat there in the courtyard of the hospital and cried. I cried because uh, this is a horrible situation. Like, the situation is just horrible. And I cried because I felt horrible shame and guilt, almost like Peter talked about in one of our other episodes, that I had done something wrong,
Hmm.
that I had missed something 6 or 8 hours earlier. Did I miss a purple spot? Could I have found something different? Uh, and so uh, what I do know is I went up. I was getting updates every day from the ICU physician. He got worse, but then he got better. He survived, but unfortunately, he lost digits and needed to have a bunch of skin grafts, if I recall correctly. And I remember going up to the hospital to visit him and asked Donna, "Do you mind if I come up?" She said, "I would love for you to come up." And I was anxious, right? Because I didn't know if she was going to blame me for his issues, you know. And I came up to the hospital, and she gave me a big hug and started to cry and said, "You saved my baby's life."
Wow.
And then I started to to become very emotional. And I said to her, I said, I am sorry. You came to me 6 hours earlier, and you looked pretty well to me. and I feel horrible. I missed it." She's like, "No, he was okay. I came up with a cold for for him, and I was a little bit worried, but you had reassured me, and no one would have known this would have developed. And you saved his life in the ER down there, and everyone has said so." And so, um, still felt bad, and um, came back, and then my last year of practice in Newport, before I left to do my training in emergency medicine, I would see this boy who is just still a very bright, smiling, happy child with a lot of limb deformities now, and it was still hard.
Yeah.
Every single time I saw him, I could put on a good face, I could be Dr. David, but inside there was this still this horrible feeling of guilt that I somehow did something wrong. And with maturity and time, I think that what I've come to realize, and I really whip myself over this,
Mhm.
like many sleepless nights, uh, really questioning, what the hell am I doing? Questioning whether I'm a good doc or a bad doc, or yeah, this internal stuff.
Mhm.
And then ultimately, um, over the course of the last, that was probably close to 25, 28 years ago, Ty. It was a long time ago. And over the course of time, especially practicing emergency medicine for children, I've really come to realize that um, uh, we cannot predict every single thing that will happen to a child after they leave care.
Mhm.
I mean, we see 70,000 visits a year
Right.
at Arkansas Children's, and there are going to be times where we send a child home that's going to have to come back that is worse. Because there are three outcomes. If you think about it, like on a very meta level, there, if you go into the emergency department and you're sick and you get discharged, we discharge 85% of the kids
Mhm.
that come into the ED. They go back home to their primary care, their house, and whatever. And 15% of the kids we admit. So for those 85%, the meta is there are three things that can happen to them. They can get better, they can stay the same, or they can get a whole lot worse. And I, we are not, uh, our level of sophistication of figuring out that last category it's still pretty blunt.
Yeah.
Um, because um, it's almost like a part of it is like predicting the future. As far as I know, no one can predict the future. And we have data, we have exams, we can do laboratory testing. All of it helps, but it is not a foolproof way to say you're 100% going to be okay. Now, I don't want parents out there worrying about their child, because it turns out that most kids get better despite what we do.
Mhm.
Literally despite what we do.
Right.
We give antibiotics that probably most of the time ineffective for many things that we think, doing something to cure, but really it's time and healing, and children are just incredible um, things to watch them and their spirit and their bodies heal in ways that adults don't.
Sure.
It's one of the reasons why I love taking care of kids, because they're resilient. Um, but what I've come to learn is that um, there are, especially early in one's career, it's very, very easy to take things very, very, very personally, and you should. And we all make errors, and most of the errors we make will go unnoticed. But sometimes we make errors that have significant effects on patients.
Mhm.
And we've learned a lot about that, actually. So what I did, and I didn't have any formal training in it, but now when there's a bad event, let's say you brought your child and we double dosed the medication, um, the best thing to do is to disclose it at the time with the family
Sure.
for multiple reasons. One is it's the right thing to do
Hmm.
because I believe in medicine we need to be more and more transparent and giving parents all the information that they can handle to support making a shared decision around treatment stuff. But more importantly, it's the right thing to do to disclose and tell the family what may or may not have happened based upon the error. Um, did I commit an error with David? I will never, never know. Like, I will never, never know because I can't recall. And I don't think I could recall at the time. Did I take every single piece of clothing off to examine every single piece of his skin? And I remember him vividly being in the office, even today. I remember the office visit, which is so odd because I saw thousands and thousands of office visits in 5 years, and that's one that I have a very distinct memory of, and so I guess the learning part around this is just be kind to ourselves and uh, and give ourselves grace at times
Yeah.
because the practice of medicine in 2025 is imperfect.
Hmm.
It is not perfect.
Right. You were saying like they didn't even have the vaccine for chickenpox yet back
Not
then.
not in 1990.
Right. And you were only 4 years into your practice. And I'm sure, I mean, you've been a doctor for a long time now. Not to age you or anything,
I'm an
but
old man.
you're not 60 yet. Uh,
I am 60. I am 60.
Uh, and I'm sure that even, all the advances of medical technology and things that we've been able to identify that are, problems and where they stem from, I'm sure it still happens where you can see a patient and then they leave and within the same day they can fall ill and you didn't see it ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think we are going to get better. I do think that artificial intelligence is going to be a part of our clinical decision making.
Hmm.
Right now, we're using artificial intelligence to record our conversations and support physicians with reducing administrative work.
Hmm.
That's the first step for artificial intelligence. So, right now, when I go in alone without a learner, because learners end up writing notes for us, which is great. But when I'm not with a resident, for example, I'll have my phone in the room, which is part of the EMR. Turn on the phone, a listening device. It's called ambient listening. It listens, and then my note is written by the time I get back to the computer.
Oh, wow.
Not fully, but maybe 80, 90% of it.
Sure.
So I went from 10 or 12 minutes of writing a note de novo, typing in black boxes and
Mhm.
text, to now I'm editing, and it may take me 2 minutes to write a note versus 12. But the next phase of it, based upon, we talked about imperfect, is when I get back to my computer and I'm writing my note, I may get a pop-up from Siri or whoever the computer's name is and it might say, "Hey, have you thought about these 3 or 4 things? You're ordering this, but have you considered X, Y, and Z?"
Hmm.
And as tests roll in, there may be a probability screen of 99% this, 1% this. Uh, so I do think that artificial intelligence is going to get us better and better. Um, and I think the third phase, and I've read a bit about this, is there'll be robots. Robots initially helping us with tasks and procedures, and then ultimately um, robots that are quite humanoid that will
Hmm.
um, uh, ultimately take over.
Like replacing doctors completely, you think?
I don't think I know.
You know? Wow.
We'll be out of business in 30 to 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, this gig is going to be over for us. There'll be humanoids doing it, or at least supporting in a very, very high level way. Um, the practice of medicine as we know it now will be over. I
Hmm.
think that's a whole other
Yeah,
conversation.
we definitely need to cover that at some point.
Yeah, no,
That's
no, no.
really,
We should talk
really
about it.
interesting. Yeah.
It's actually fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, this is another story that I'm sure it sticks with you. I'm sure you have dozens that have affected you in one way or another, but I think it's good that you can still reflect on this and that you haven't become calloused. You know what I mean? You feel, and that's kind of like the going theme every time we talk to a doctor or medical provider on the show. It's always been how it profoundly affected them and like still sticks with them, but it fuels them in how they continue to provide those services to other people going in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate that. And I guess we can sort of close this up by saying that um, what this experience did is one of hundreds or thousands of experiences that I've had that have really shaped me for my approach
sure.
for things. And what's really interesting about this, and everyone has their own feel for it and value system, but for me, Uh, do I love being in the trauma bay when there's a sick child? You know, I don't want a sick child, but do I love caring for children who are super sick? Yes. Um, uh, do I love procedures? Of course. I want to help children and whatnot. But I would say that for me right now, when I look back at my career, all of the procedures and critical things I did that may have saved a child's life or affected their quality of life, uh, pale in comparison, literally pale in comparison to my connection with families.
Mm.
And I look back at this family with Donna and David, and I was deeply connected with them as a human being. And, I had to give bad news yesterday um, in the emergency department, and I made a diagnosis of cancer, and it was, you know, we did a good job around the medical side of things, but the most important thing that I did was talking to the family
Mm.
by far. Not what particular tests I ordered and the order that I ordered those tests, but it was finding the right moment to sit down with the family and let them know that their child has cancer.
Yeah.
So I think that that art of medicine, that piece, has my opinion, most impact that you can have on a family and can be the most meaningful part of the crazy, impossible work that we do sometimes.
Hmm.
Human connection. That's why we called it HUMED.
That's right.
Well, thank you for interviewing me today. I love your studio, by
uh,
the way. This is
Thank you.
cool.
Yeah.
And you're moving studios in 2 months?
Constantly improving and constantly growing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. I've got to go to Home Depot after this and go get some supplies to build a new set. But yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah. But no, thank you for sharing these stories and for helping. I guess I know this helps people that are already in the medical industry, but people from the outside that don't really know what the medical professionals go through on a personal level, like this helps a lot. Not all of us live in a small town in Oregon that can just be related and just sit down and with you across the diner and be like, "How you doing, Doctor Spiro?" Um, but yeah, knowing that the people that are providing in the hospitals, like they do have their own personal lives. They're human beings and they experience things. And so these stories, I think, really help, like going back to the human side of medicine, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I dig hanging out in the studio. I feel like
Yeah.
this is like
Yeah.
I've achieved a certain level of coolness.
Oh, you certainly have. Yeah. Yeah. Your subscriber rate is growing, your viewer rate. Definitely.
Woo!
Yes. That's right.
Woo! Yeah, we're gonna kill it. And
For sure.
yeah, I'm learning about social media and Instagram. I'm trying to stay cool and hip, even though I'm 60.
Yeah.
I'm an old man.
That doesn't matter what age you are. Yeah.
All right. Uh, Viewers, please check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you digest your podcast, and leave feedback. And we were also on YouTube. Subscribe, and thank you for listening. Hope you all have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to HUMED with David Sparrow, MD. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform. The video versions are also available on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell there so that you never miss a future episode.